Emily, my goodness, I love every time that we hang out. I'm so excited we get to do this today.
I'm so excited to get to chat with you today and all the people in the chat. Uh,
I know everyone's here.
oh my gosh, I hope that they sound off. Everybody, tell us in the chat, where are you right now in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear where everyone is. Please keep the conversation going in the chat. Wow, so many people. Um, let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you're liking and enjoying in this conversation as well. Use the Q&A box for questions. We'll get to them at the end. Um, we will be recording today's session. It will be going to all of our registrants after the session. And we found that last time we had a little bit of overhang for extra questions and we were kind of chatting for a little longer. So we might do that again today. So if you have to run and we're still chatting, you will get a copy of the recording so you can see what we spoke about if you need to. We're also going to be running some polls and hearing from you as we do this session. So please, let us know what you're thinking about the questions we're asking. We're excited. Today, I'm speaking with my friend Emily Mabie. I'm very excited to be here with you, Emily.
Thrilled.
I would love, the first time we met, we were both speaking on a panel at the Irish Consulate, super fun in New York. And I was super impressed with both the work that you're doing, which I just love. And then the second thing is the way that you talk about the work you're doing in a really practical human way that feels like it just clicks. There's something about it that just makes sense. So I'd love, if you don't mind, introducing yourself to all of our listeners out here today. And if you could give a little quick 2-minute rundown of the topic we talked about on an email, which you spoke about in the Irish Consulate, which is the different jobs AI can do for you. And that's going to be kind of the framing of today as well. So over to you.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Emily Mabie, and I am an AI automation engineer specifically for people work. So I help people and HR teams build AI automations that thoughtfully incorporate human skill and humans intentionally. And I work at Zapier, which is an AI automation company. And Jesse's exactly right. That's where we met. And oh my gosh, I was fangirling so hard because I was like, I literally own your book. And yeah, we chatted a little bit in advance about the idea of there's this whole spectrum, right? There's this spectrum of AI and automation. And if you'll bear with the hand gestures, all the way on the left hand side, perhaps, is pure automation. There's no AI involved. A human designs a workflow that moves data from one app to another. And on the far other side is fully agentic AI work where
Yeah.
AI is, given a goal by a human and moves data through apps and does whatever it needs to kind of meet the goal. And there's all this stuff in between. But no matter where you are in the process, whether you're building an automation with no AI in it whatsoever or a fully agentic workflow, the most important question, in my opinion, that Jesse alluded to is where humans show up in the process, whether it's their judgment, human in the loop, or how we're designing to meet human needs. And even if you're using Copilot or Claude, a human still has to decide from start to finish, the impact, the outcome, where a human is or is not being replaced in the process, which sometimes is to our benefit and sometimes it isn't. So you have to be very critical as you're thinking through those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. I think this is super helpful because we're going to be trying to show a couple of different ways that you can use AI as a tool. And like you rightfully said, it's not just one way you can use it, it's all different ways. So the example I'm going to be talking about today is more focused on the kind of co-pilot side of things. So it's me asking it to do some very specific tasks, and I'm kind of using it almost like a paintbrush. Rather than using it to make a decision or move something around without me looking at it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a leveling tool I've built and show you a little bit about how I did this. And for this, we love a poll. When an employee wants to know what's expected at their level, what actually happens? They ask their manager, there's a doc somewhere, we have it in a framework, or we already have something that works really well, something else maybe. So I'm going to show you what we did. We had a similar problem here at Leapsome. We had a leveling framework that was in this big, long doc, which we love in HR. For a very long time, this was like the bread and butter of HR, right? You would have something that looks a little bit like this. This kind of big framework. You'd have a lot of information about how to read the document, all this context about what everything means, questions people might ask. And you would also have what usually used to look like a table, like a matrix, right? So I'm kind of like swinging through this because you don't really need to know all the information we have here. Nothing's proprietary, nothing's, I don't want you to read, but really just, you can understand like the amount of context a human brain needs to understand a leveling matrix is gigantic. And then we're expecting people to be able to use that and understand how to assess themselves and give their peers feedback. And we were finding it was just really hard for people to figure out, like, how do I compare these different things? What's the context of it? So what I did is I actually used Claude to build a tool that you can see here. So rather than have these matrices, what we now have is this. And what I've done is I've connected it through to Leapsome. So you can put in, for example, me. Here I am. And it will take you straight through to my level, or you can kind of poke around and see what other levels look like. But the visual element of this means that we can also have little bits like, okay, cool, that's what impact means at an IC2. Well, give me an example. So you can kind of run a multi-week project from kickoff to launch. You can give me an example of what leadership might look like. There's a bit of extra context, people clicking into it. We have our own AI fluency index. I know Zapier also has one, which is very well loved. And what this does is it just makes things a little easier for people to access. They can find themselves with the person they're reviewing. They understand which level that person is. And then they can really drill into examples to try and kind of contextualize their own level. And we found this is like a much more helpful tool than just sending a big Notion doc. And I want to show you a little bit about how I built it. So what I actually have here is the whole chat history, pretty much. There's a little bit of tweaking that happened afterwards, which I use to build this exact tool you're looking at. And I just built it in Claude. And I'm going to show you today how I did it. So if I go over to Claude, I've got my little prompt. I'd like to build this thing. And then what I've got is a download of the current or the previous leveling framework. So this is what everything looks like. At the moment, we use this Notion page, but the overlay of these extra things feels complex. It's really difficult for me to represent both AI fluency and leveling specifics. Can you build something that allows people to better see their level, what they're being assessed against, the next level, and maybe even like a tooltip to better contextualize? I then send that through to Claude. It's going to run, but I'll show you what happened next. Is it came back and said, great, this is what I've built, and this is the first example. So the first thing it tried to do was build me this thing, and you can see it's actually looking exactly the way that it did, but at the time, it actually didn't have the search bar. We added that. It didn't give me an example. We added that. But it gave me the first pass. This is what it might want to look like. And then I went back and said, here's a bunch of changes I'd like to see. So here you go, back to the one that's like still working on this for me. We go. So then this is my initial prompt back. This is my changes I requested. I said, I'd like to make some changes here. Actually, it would be good to add our compensation framework, which actually talks a little bit about comp and what we expect for comp. It's like, okay, great. It's made some changes now and made it a little easier to use. Now I wanted to add some extra things. So as you can see, I go back and forth with the AI here because what I'm trying to get to is a finished product that I feel is really solving the problems I have. They will always be recorded. Do not worry, Anissa. So I'm going to go back and forth with the AI. And then what I actually did was I took away the version that they'd built for me. And before we went and hosted it anywhere. And I sat with members of our team. I called them up on Slack in a huddle and said, can you quickly jump on a call? I want to send you a link. I want you to share your screen and show me how you'd use this tool. So people would go onto the leveling framework that I've just shown you here, back to this, and they would click around and they'd type their own name and they'd have a look and they'd give me some feedback. I'd record all of that feedback and then I'd upload it back into Claude. So then you can see here, actually, someone's now asked for some details about how to change the manager one. They were interested in this. So can we actually build a backend with a little search bar? Can we pull through from the Leapsome MCP? Here's where the data is going to come, blah, 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 blah. And what I end up with is the finished product of this tool. And then yes, absolutely, we can share the prompts. Then all we needed to do was take that HTML packet from Claude and then upload it into, we use Netlify to host our tools. And our team were then able to use it. So it's a live product available to you there. But that's what I wanted to show you. One of the really quick ways you can use AI, like I mentioned, like less like an agent and more like a paintbrush. It is helping you take this idea, this big idea you have in your head, and turn it into something that people can use, which maybe to you before was only available through these big long Notion pages that are difficult to parse. So it's a great example of where I think, Emily, I'm not sure if you have this at Zapier or how you guys have dealt with this, but we often get feedback that people feel like the production of AI content has just resulted in having to read a lot. We have to read all these things down because AI is writing all this writing. But I think this is a really great example of where you actually can kind of counterbalance that by saying, well, if this wasn't in writing, what would it look like? How can I ask AI to deliver this in an easier way? So actually, here's a great, like, I've just used this exact same prompt and it's come up with something slightly different. This is closer to what I first saw, right? And I would then want to give it back and forth feedback about how to make it better. I don't think that this is exactly how I'd like it. Do I want it to show the next level or not, right? So I'm going to give it feedback and I would refine what I'm looking for. Okay, that's my first share. Emily, what are you thinking?
I absolutely love, first of all, the use of the phrase like AI as a paintbrush, right? It's a tool in our hand to create something that works for us. Something that I also love, Jesse, about what you showcased is I know that like anybody who's ever heard me appear anywhere hears me say the same phrase over and over again, which is like the person who feels the pain of their unique circumstance every day is going to build the best solution. And the heart of that is this idea of like customization is key with any tool. Like if I have a chair that's customized for me, it will be more comfortable and meet my needs better than if it's a chair built for anyone. And I love that in your example, you built a tool, anyone can put their own information in and get customized output that truly like meets their own unique needs.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's role is different. That is like gets right to the heart of how I feel about building. And I would love to take just a minute.
Sure.
Showcase like how to build something that's customized for you and your team and your needs, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. That's what we're here for.
Amazing. All right, people, come with me. Here we go. I'm gonna showcase. And another thing I'll say out loud is we're in a sweet, compact session together today. If you've ever built with me before, you know I can stretch this out to an hour. So I'm just going to remind you, if you joined late, this is recorded. So if I go faster than you'd like on anything, just know that you can rewatch the recording. You can pause as needed. But I'm going to build a little more at speed today. So I'm going to be using Zapier for this build. If you wanted to do that with me, all you have to do is set up a free trial. You don't need to pay for anything to build with me today. That's what's on the screen. But I'm going to head to Zapier. We have a whole bunch of different products that we can use. I'm just going to build a straight up automation today. So harken back to a few minutes ago when I talked about the spectrum from like automation all the way over to something fully agentic. We're going to build kind of in the middle. And the first thing I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about the pain point I'm building for today is I think we probably all live in a world where there's one random channel. I'm actually going to open Slack where like anybody with any HR question posts it and just fingers crossed that the right person sees it and gets back to them. It's very human, labor intensive. And the other thing, I'm going to harken back to what Jesse said. We in HR love our docs. We've all got documented processes, but there's so much of it that each person at our company truly can't be expected to know all that information. And that's why path of least resistance, they just ask the question in a channel. And so instead of waiting and not meeting their user need, which is just to get the information we've already documented, I'm going to show you how quickly and easily I can use an automation and AI to get people the answer they need and make space for my HR team to spend their time doing way more valuable work. And it starts with a trigger and an action. So a trigger, if you've never built an automation before, is just what wakes up our AI automation to take action. So if I use the example of Slack, which is my native work environment here in Slack, I would want my automation to wake up as soon as someone posts their HR question in our HR channel. So when I think that way, I'm going to fill in a when then sentence. I'm going to fill in the blank. When a new message comes in our Slack channel, then I want those people to get their needs met. Okay, so the trigger is the when part of the sentence. When a new message comes in Slack, and now if you're thinking, Emily, we don't use Slack, we use something else. Great news. Zapier has over 9,000 different apps to choose from. I'm choosing Slack, but you could explore finding a different app that your team uses. Now, I used a when then sentence before. I said when a new message comes in the channel. So that's what I'm going to look for as the trigger that wakes up my automation. Let's see, when there's a new channel created, when there's a new mention, no. When there's a new, I'm going to say new message posted to channel. There we go. This will wake up our automation whenever there's a new message posted in that channel. So let's go ahead. I'll hook it up to my work Slack. And then I just have to choose which channel. Now for you guys, I'm using the test webinar channel. But if I were to turn this on internally, I'd use the HR channel, wherever most people ask their questions. Okay, I love the question about confidentiality. That is such a good one. The great news is Zapier's product is like completely GDPR compliant. We've got all of these great governance features that I probably won't have time to dig into with you right now, but I can share a resource if you want to dig in yourself. And I clicked test in front of you just now. I can see it pulled in the last message in the channel, which if I head back was this one. Hey, I want to move to Spain. Can you help me with that? Here's another question I see all the time. I'm posting it now. I'm a new hire. My laptop's not here yet. What gives? Let's go back here. I can click find new records. I can pull in new test records, and I'll be able to grab that Slack message in addition to, let's see, look at this. If I scroll down, hey, I'm a new hire in the UK. My laptop's not here yet. What should I do? Fantastic. So we know it's working. It's going to wake up whenever a new message gets posted in the channel. When a new message gets posted in that Slack channel, then I want my user to get their needs met. I don't want them to have to wait for a human unless it's important. So that's where I'm going to bring in the then part, the action. And for this, I'm going to just use AI by Zapier. If I click out of here for a second, so you can see the structure, our trigger wakes up the automation, and then any actions we put after it are going to do the things I want in order to meet the goal. So in this case, I'm using this thing called AI by Zapier. It's got a little bit of an anatomy, so I'll walk you through it. The way it works is, at the top, it has a prompt. We're all kind of familiar with how prompts work now. It's instructions we write for AI to take action. Usually it's just talking to us. In this case, we're going to give it tools so that it can go do things we want. And here's the prompt I'm going to write. So we already know it starts with, when a new Slack message comes into my HR channel, what do I want to have happen? Well, number one, I want it to read the whole thread of messages. Why do I want that? Because at Zapier, a lot of times, like, there'll be 7 or 8 messages of people adding context, and I don't want it to just read the top message. I want it to get the whole thing. So I want it to grab all the information the user already has, any additional context they've shared, etc. And I'm going to give the prompt the timestamp so it can go find the whole thread of messages. So I'm going to say, here's the timestamp. And then the great thing about using this tool is, if I hit the / key, I can bring in any information from earlier in my workflow. So I can say, here's the timestamp. I could even say sent by, and I could add who sent it, which is going to be different every single time it runs. In this case, it was a message I posted. What else do I want it to do? Well, I want it to use that information. Now I want it to use, you know what? I want it to use knowledge sources, because I already mentioned, and Jesse did too, we've got documentation in HR. Our problem isn't needing more documentation. It's needing people to be able to get what they need out of it, right? Like, it already exists, but now we need to surface it to users in a way that's constructive. So let's have them gather all of the information you'll need. And the best part is, by the way, I know spelling in front of you is an extreme sport, but AI will figure it out. So I want it to give the actual answer if it's in the documentation. So if you have it, I don't want it to like guess or ask more questions than it needs to. I don't want it to overwhelm the user. So I'll just say, just give them just what they need. Now, I spelled badly. It doesn't really matter. The other things I really want it to do, and you know what, just for the sake of time, I'm going to copy and paste, and I'll give all this to you in the chat if you're building with me. I want it to do two more things. If something is sensitive, so if somebody came into the channel and they're like, hey, my colleague punched me at an offsite, what should I do? That doesn't belong in the channel. I want it to reroute them to the right person. And if they have an answer, I want them to put it in the Slack thread. Don't make the channel all messy by replying in the channel. Let's keep it tight, right in the thread. Now, if you're working alongside me, I'm going to put this in the chat for you. So don't you worry. I know we all type at different speeds, and I don't want you to feel rushed. All right, here's what we've got. Oh, no, it's too big. Let's break it into two, Emily. Boop. The last thing you need to know about using this tool, AI by Zapier is the tool that we're using, is we have the prompt box here where we wrote what we want, but it cannot do any of those things unless we add in the tools to allow it to reach into our apps. So I'm going to add a few tools. The first one is I asked it to read the whole thread of Slack messages. We didn't give it a tool for that. So we have to give it the Slack tool. We also have to give it knowledge sources. Wherever we've documented our HR policies, we have to give it access to read those and reply. And then I also need to give it the ability to reply in Slack. So I'm going to pop those in real quick. I'm going to look for those tools. Slack. One of them is sending a channel message, right? I want it to reply right in the channel thread. I'm going to go ahead and let it do that. So I'm adding that tool first. I also said I want it to be able to read the Slack message. That's actually a second tool. Just because we gave it permission to read a thread doesn't mean it has permission to send a message, and vice versa too. So in this case, we have to find the tool to let it read the entire Slack thread. Boop, 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 boop. I'm browsing because there's a lot of actions, which is great. There's a lot of stuff it could do in Slack for us. I think it's down at the bottom, the one that I want. And then in addition to, there we go, retrieve all of the thread messages. And the last thing I want to do is make sure it has access to our documentation, our HR documentation. Now, I've been adding tools to let it take action. In this case, I'm not going to add one more tool. I'm going to add a knowledge source. So all I have to do is pick, do I keep my documentation in Notion or Google Docs or a spreadsheet? Wherever I keep it, I'm going to find those documents and just point the agent in the right direction. All right, so I'll just show you one briefly. I'll go ahead and choose our laptop provisioning guide. I'll just point it there. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to click preview to see it work. So remember, I posted here in the Slack channel, hey, I'm a new hire. My laptop hasn't arrived yet. Is there something I should be doing? And now my little agent build is kicking off. I can already see it's reading the whole thread in case there's more information. It's searching our knowledge source for information. And while it's doing that, I'm about to wrap up our demo. The last thing you need to know is if it gives an answer and I go back and ask more questions, so I can show you the one I posted right before we joined today. I was like, I want to move to Spain. The help desk bot read the documentation about internal mobility, told me what to do. I replied again, and I was like, I think I already did that. Now what? And it read the whole thread and told me what comes next because it's waking up every time a new post comes into this channel. So it's not just a one-off. You can see here, I've already gotten my reply. Hey, Emily, great question. You're in the UK. It usually takes up to 2 weeks to get your laptop. In the meantime, please don't use your personal computer for work. If it's been more than 2 weeks, let us know so I could reply here and say something's wrong and kick this all off again. The point being, if I turn this on right now, which I can do, I'll stop screen sharing. It's not that I'm replacing an HR team, right? We never had a whole HR team whose only job it was to monitor Slack. We had people who were taking valuable time out of their job to reply and share links to information we already had documented. This just augments their time so that now they have more time to do the human stuff and get people what they need faster. So can't emphasize that enough. We're not replacing, we're just augmenting. Jesse?
Amazing. Thank you. So many questions have come in. I'm really excited to get stuck into them. I'd love to put another poll out. It's interesting. I think that the answer to the previous poll is almost like such a great lead into what you just said, right? It was like, my question was, when an employee wants to know what their expected level is, the most responded answer is they ask their manager, and it's inconsistent every time. And I actually think one of the points you've just raised here, which is how do employees interact with information, I think it's actually also really difficult for them to get the same information as a peer, because they're kind of like digging around in documents, asking a manager. So it's really helpful for consistency of surfacing information when you've got something like this that's able to be trained about your own info. Okay, I would love to go into some like kind of Q&A. I just want to show one quick thing. There's a couple of questions here. First of all, there's a lot of questions about how do we host things, how do we use these tools, do they integrate with Microsoft, do they integrate with SharePoint? I think there's going to be some technical things just to cover for those out there wondering. First of all, everything I built today that you saw I was just building that directly in my browser, talking to Claude. It doesn't have any differences between Microsoft and Google or Apple operating systems. It's just in the browser. And I think the same is true for what Emily has just built. She's built on Zapier, which is in browser. You can do it on any operating system. It becomes about connecting the right tools you do use. So if you don't use Slack, you might want to connect it to Teams. If you're not using an Excel spreadsheet, but you're instead using Airtable, that would be a different way to do it. So it's just understanding your tool stack and building in, but none of these things that we talked about today preclude a specific operating system or work setup. There's a few people asking about that. But I think the other thing I really quickly wanted to demo is actually if you don't have access to, for example, a Zapier, or you don't have access to, example, for a Claude, there are still other things that you can do within some HRISs. So I'm going to really quickly show you a very quick demo on an AI workflow inside of Leapsome. And if I just get this open. So I'm just going to get into here. Sorry about this. Because I understand like building some of these things, if you don't have the tools, Emily, like you're so lucky. We're so lucky at companies like Zapier and Leapsome. We just have access to so much, but some of us, of course, don't have the ability to do that. So I wanted to maybe show that demo, but maybe we'll do a couple of questions first while I'm getting in, because my demo environment seems to have closed down, which is classic for a live demo. So maybe we'll answer some of these questions as we go through. Joey, actually, Joey's a great one. I can see you're typing there, Emily. When or why would you use an MCP with the Zapier example? I think there's a lot of questions in here about MCPs, about, I've kind of flagged towards APIs. We're starting to get into like some pretty technical things, because what both of us are demoing today is actually pretty technical. This used to be like engineering world, and now all of a sudden we can start getting involved. So do you mind just giving a little bit of a background around, the technicalities of what you're building?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you saw that the way that I built that workflow was just like snapping Legos together, right? I didn't use any code. I just connected apps together. If you don't know what MCP is, it's sort of like how your computer has USB ports. And if you plug your keyboard and your mouse and your webcam in, the computer can use those tools. MCP is like opening Claude and then connecting apps to the USB ports of Claude, which is called an MCP server. Leapsome's got an MCP server. I know Zapier's got one. And the cases where I would recommend using that are exactly what Jesse demonstrated. You are talking through a problem, something that you are trying to solve, and you're physically there. If you are going to not be at the computer, like for example, I'm asleep, HR help desk still needs to help people, that should be an automation, not using MCP, because MCP, generally speaking, you need to be present in the conversation to use it, which is where it really shines. It has huge value.
Amazing. So hopefully that helps understand the use of that. I'm going to, there's quite a lot of questions about this. Once you've built the leveling framework in Claude, how do people access it? I've given a couple of different answers here as well. Some people are asking like, how do I make this tool? I don't see it. How do I host it? How do the team access it? So I'm going to just give you a quick overview of that part of the process too. So let me go back here. So you'll remember I had this screen. This is what Claude built. But when I initially had built it, it looks like this. So it came back to me in a response. And then what I could do is then see what Claude has built. But what this actually is a HTML file. And a HTML file is just the code that creates this website. I went into a tool called Netlify, which is just a hosting service that helps turn that code into something that people can see anywhere. So just a kind of a portal, a window to share that code. And I hosted it on Netlify. So all I need to do is put it into Netlify. I made sure that my database was in there, and then it was all secure. And then I could just assign a URL to it so the team could access. So that's how I took it from just in Claude to being able to have access to everybody. But if you would prefer to not have to go through that step of like publishing it, you can also share an artifact if you have a corporate Claude account. So you can share and copy it there. And then anyone with access to this link will be able to access this exact same artifact, but it will be in Claude. So it's not quite as neat. One of the things I really like about this is that you're able to have this embedded element into Notion, which is not possible if you're using a Claude artifact. But as you can see here, it really does give you the ability to kind of like do things quite easily if it's easier for you. So hopefully that helps to answer the question about how do we do it. There was a couple of other questions about recording, a couple of questions around, maybe this goes back into Claude and Copilot. I also mentioned Claude Design. There are a few different types of ways you can build on Claude. One of them is just talking to Claude and getting answers. One of them is getting Claude to do something for you. So telling it, do this task, and it uses your computer, Copilot. Another is designing something for you. So it's very much focused on the front end design. That is just a little more powerful than the kind of Claude chat. It just does a few more things in terms of making really dynamic pages with lots of tabs, those kinds of things. And then the final one is Claude Code, which is really moving you out of this kind of front end experience and into just interacting directly with code, which is also very helpful. Okay, I think that's the majority of the questions, and we're now at time. Let me just quickly tell a few more come in. We will definitely send a recording of the webinar. Absolutely. We've told you how to access, and there's a questions there about static information. Yes, so that comes back to this like MCP question. It comes back to if you're going to connect with an API and have it directly reading from somewhere. So this is actually a great example of where something like Zapier is really helpful. You could build something that just has a static database that I just say, okay, I want you to read this sheet and tell me the answer. Or you can build a Zapier connection, which is very possible as well in Netlify. So you combine what Emily and I just did. And you build your website, and then you go into the back end of Zapier, and you could ask it to pull information from Leapsome and then put it into the website. So exactly the same as what Emily was just describing there. If someone comes to my website and types in a name, I want you to go and find the person's level and send it back to them in this website. So these things are very possible using these same two tools. Okay, so much to cover. I wanted to wrap up a little bit, Emily. You obviously have learned so much about how to build and use with AI. And I think sometimes it just, watching a demo like this, it feels like almost second nature, right? It feels kind of effortless. Like both you and I just know what to do. We're pulling different things around and we're talking about it. I would love to hear a little bit for everyone listening. What were the things that really helped you feel more second nature with this? What kind of mindset did you approach the experimentation phase? How did you figure out when AI should be a workflow, when AI should be a paintbrush, when AI should be making decisions? And how did you kind of go about that process?
Yeah, something that I highlighted when you were talking, Jesse, and something that I keep coming back to, this idea of like customizing for you, is actually the reason I focus on it is because it's a pitfall I fell into at first. Was I would build what seemed like the best way to do something, the coolest way to do something, or the thing that I thought like would show up the best to other people. And then I would abandon those workflows. I would abandon like whatever I had built because it wasn't actually the way that I work. It wasn't using the tools I use, even if that was like imperfect and kind of dumb. And so I started off with a lot of abandoned work. And the very first couple of things I built, I didn't tell anybody about because I wasn't super proud of them. I assumed everybody knew more than me and was further ahead. The real unlock for me and my career, a lot of you already know this, but if you don't, my whole start was I was just in manager enablement, totally non-technical role. That was still my job when I was on the panel with Jesse at the Irish consulate. But the real unlock for me to getting into a spot where people look to me as an AI innovation leader was I started filming myself building stupid stuff, and I just shared it over and over with my team, sometimes I would immediately learn that I had built something the least effective way because I would get that feedback early and I could fail often and quickly. Other times I would learn that everyone else had been way too scared to try something or learn something themselves, and it was a huge unlock for other people. So my top tip for people, if you feel like you're not native yet and you're like, I want to get there, is you don't have to film it, but just share it all the time. When you don't feel ready, share it when you don't think it's done. Just start sharing it, because the earlier you get the feedback and the earlier you find out if it's working or not, the earlier you can build your skills.
Yes, absolutely. I fully agree with that. I really like, there are so many fun little ways you can learn how to use this. I think one of the things that we've done really well in our team to kind of take the pressure off people feeling that they have to produce like production ready work for their colleagues is we did a hackathon where we said, like, your job is to do things like produce a packing list helper, produce you can list a bunch of ingredients that are in your fridge and it will help you create a recipe, a potluck dinner planner. Like, if you're doing something fun like that, it actually takes a lot of the stress out of building, because all of a sudden you're like, well, it doesn't really matter if my potluck dinner planner is a little silly because it's just fun, right? But
Yes.
it does feel like it really matters if it's your workflow for people answering questions about their onboarding.
Yes. And I don't know about you, Jesse, but I'm seeing a lot more hate online around personal productivity building and how, like, oh, we need to move past this personal productivity building phase and like get into a team level phase. Sure, absolutely. But the personal productivity building, like the potluck helper that you mentioned, is where we build confidence and skill before people can then expand into building for the team. So yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I think hackathons in non-technical teams, 10 out of 10, and getting people first to build those low risk builds is really, really important, even though I do see them getting a lot more hate on the internet right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Emily. I really appreciated building with you today. I love these sessions because they're just like so high energy because you have to sprint through them so quickly. We had so many questions. We had so many people coming and joining us. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. Ask us more questions. We want to do more and more of these things. I really like the idea that we can get into like lots of technicalities and like show things. So hopefully Emily and I will be back on here again in the future. Yes, with love.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I would love that. Anytime I get to hang out with you is a blast.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, everyone. Hope you have a lovely rest of your Monday, and I will see you on the flip side. Bye.
Bye. Have a good trip. Bye.